Trade reports are escalating surrounding the Winnipeg Jets as talks are starting to heat up as a new report has come out revealing a new Jets trade target. We're going to break down who that target is and discuss what a trade would look like for the defenseman. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, about 70% of you, this is the place to be for daily Jets content. So if you're enjoying it, make sure to hit that button. I know they lost yesterday, but we have a lot to discuss today. So make sure to hit that button, stay up to date. But Darius, the Jets finally lost. They've come back to earth after losing against the Toronto Maple Leafs a couple weeks ago now. But we're going to talk about a trade report that has come out today. And again, the Jets have been unbelievable. Whether or not they need to make a move is still up in the air. But an insider has linked the Winnipeg Jets to Penguins defenseman. We're going to get into it and who the player is in a second because it might not be the initial person you think it is. But a couple days ago, a report came out from the Pittsburgh Penguins and Kyle Dubas saying that everybody aside from Sidney Crosby is available in a trade. And this has really caused talks to start heating up surrounding a lot of teams around the NHL. But when you look at the blue line, really, that's the only point, and if you even want to call it a point of weakness, I don't think it is. It's been a strength for them, especially last season. But if there's an area where they can upgrade specifically on that third pairing, it would be the blue line. And we're going to get into this player now, Darius. I'm curious to see what you think of this report, and we can dive into it now. You can see this here. They got some flexibility. David Paidana came out on the Fourth Period podcast and said Marcus Pettersson is probably going to be on a lot of teams' radar and linked him to the Winnipeg Jets. So what are your thoughts on this player? We'll get into his stats. We'll get into how he fits with the team and kind of discuss what a trade package would look like. But Marcus Pettersson, a very interesting player.
So very interesting, like you said. I guess the Winnipeg Jets only lose to teams that wear only blue and white this year, I guess. So they should have a pretty good record by the end of the season. But like you said, it's not a point of weakness. But if you look at the defense, they can add. They can definitely add. They have Hayden Fleury coming in now because, of course, Logan Stanley's still out with an injury. And we saw the comments about Logan Stanley. Fans are not too high on this player. So they can definitely add on the blue line. And obviously, like you mentioned, the Pittsburgh Penguins are having a bit of a fire sale, or it seems like they might end up having a bit of a fire sale, whatever that looks like for them, because they have a lot of no movement clauses. But one guy who doesn't, like we mentioned, is Marcus Pettersson. And I think he could look really good on the Winnipeg Jets blue line. This is a pretty decent defensive defenseman, and we can take a look at his stats as well. And this is not a guy you're going to look at to put up points for you, but the Winnipeg Jets have that, right? They have guys on the blue line who are going to put up points for you. So only 8 points in 18 games so far this season with the Pittsburgh Penguins, but they have the best offense from their defense in the league, the Winnipeg Jets, that is. So they don't have to add another offensive guy, but this would be a really good add on the back end for them, defensively at least. So it's definitely a move. I think this is an upgrade on Logan Stanley. I will say that. And it's pretty interesting. The first person you would think when you hear a defenseman is available from the Pittsburgh Penguins is Chris Letang, but it's not. It's Marcus Pettersson. Apparently, there may not be a contract extension available there. So it's very interesting. I think he could fit in with the Jets very well, actually.
Yeah, he still put up 8 points. He's averaging about 22 minutes a game. So he would absolutely be an upgrade over Logan Stanley. And again, Logan Stanley hasn't really impressed at all this season. Again, we saw the comments, and I think he still has some potential, but I don't know if it's with the Winnipeg Jets at this point. We saw with the Toronto Maple Leafs, not the exact same situation, but a young defenseman, Timothy Liljegren, wanted a trade. He wasn't getting playing time with the Leafs, got traded, and now he got his first goal yesterday with the San Jose Sharks. So it could be interesting. You see this here. Pagano believes if Jets GM Kevin Cheveldayoff can get his hands on a top four defender, they might be a completely unbeatable team. I've got to imagine that Chevy and the crew in Winnipeg are going to take a good look at him. They add someone else to that top four decor, and they're going to be that much more potent. And again, as you look at the blue line, if you want to bring it back up, Darius, you would, depending where you put him in, you'd assume that the top four is pretty locked in, but they can get creative with the pairings if they want to do so, if they do get Pettersson. But he would be a huge upgrade over Hayden Fleury, of course, but an upgrade over Colin Miller, upgrade over Logan Stanley. Like, he'd be a guy who can immediately help lengthening out this decor. And again, I know some Jets fans out there want them to add maybe a third line center, or add some other forwards and things like some stuff to the offensive group. I think at this point, if they're going to add anywhere, it's going to be at the blue line. And I'm also not a huge fan of, the analytics support it. Like, making huge deals at the deadline rarely is going to be the difference between winning the Stanley Cup and not. It's a team that's already in place. So if they're going to make a move, I don't want them to get rid of a ton of assets. Just make a trade, a solid trade to bolster the one, if you want to even call it, it's not even a weak spot, the one spot that isn't absolutely amazing in the blue line. It's still very good, but that bottom pairing could use a bit of a bolster. But I think even if they don't make this trade, they're still in a very, very good spot. But replacing Logan Stanley with Marcus Pettersson would be something that, incredible, quite frankly. And again, Logan Stanley's off to a rough start. Still yet to be seen how Hayden Fleury is going to be this season. But getting Pettersson in there would really shore up this blue line.
It would add a lot of depth to the blue line. It's a like you said, it's a guy that they don't need to trade for, and they still probably will be okay, as we've seen this season. They've only lost twice since November 15th. It's pretty ridiculous. But if you were to add a guy like Marcus Pettersson to this decor, he can play. Like, you could get creative with it. Obviously, I like what Sandberg and Pionk are doing, so I don't know if I would change that up. And obviously, the top pairing I wouldn't change up. It's a great dynamic, but you could get creative if things start to falter a little bit. If you had a guy like Pettersson, he can easily play top six, obviously, but top 4 minutes on the Winnipeg Jets. And again, they could get creative with it. But I think if you replace a guy like Hayden Fleury or Logan Stanley with a guy like Marcus Pettersson, yes, Marcus Pettersson wouldn't be the biggest fish out there at the trade deadline per se, but what he could do for this team is add so much more depth. They would be so much harder to play against the Winnipeg Jets in the playoffs with a guy like Marcus Pettersson, because you have 4 lines that would roll. Maybe you add another depth guy, like you said, on the forward group, and not like a big fish or anything like that, because you guys are rolling anyway. So, maybe don't add someone crazy on forward, but if you were to add someone like Pettersson on the defensive end, this is a hard team to play against, because the goaltending is great. The defense there would be so much depth, and obviously each forward line has a purpose and is rolling. So if you added, I think they're like 1 or 2 pieces away from being serious contenders. And I mean, a lot of fans are saying, just take me to the playoffs already. We've seen a lot of that in the comments and online. If you were to add a guy like Pettersson to this, it makes them very tough to beat in the playoffs. I think there would be so much depth, and barring any injuries, they would be a really hard out.
Yeah, I still think they're still serious contenders, but they've yet to show it in the playoffs. That's the biggest problem with this Winnipeg Jets team year in and year out. But we saw last season, they kind of went all in to a degree. They obviously didn't give up too many assets, but they got Sean Monahan, they got Tyler Toffoli, and neither of those guys necessarily gelled super well with Rick Bowness' system, and they didn't play great in the playoffs. And ultimately, they left in free agency. So if you're getting a guy who's a rental or really trading for anybody at the deadline, it needs to be someone that isn't gonna, again, you can't really trade your way to a Stanley Cup. Everybody's gonna need to play well, but by getting Pettersson, you mentioned it, especially on the third line there, replacing not Colin Miller, Logan Stanley, or in this case Hayden Fleury, that is a huge upgrade, even just from an experience perspective, especially come playoff time. Like, yeah, Logan Stanley has his value being physical, but in the playoffs, you need guys who are sound. You need guys who won't cost you any games. And we've already seen this season Logan Stanley, I'm not going to say he cost the Jets games, but they cost the shutout streak with Connor Hellebuck. So there's a lot of different things here. It's safe to say that Pettersson, an upcoming UFA, so again, he is going to be a rental, will be a top player to watch on the trade boards. If the Jets have a hole to fill anywhere in their lineup, it's exactly what Pettersson can provide. And that's the reason we're talking about a trade at this point. The team's 15-2, but this guy seems like a perfect fit. And I also don't think he would cost a absolute haul. I think they could get him similar to what they got some of their other guys at the trade deadline in Monahan and Toffoli last season. I don't think they're going to give up a first like they did to get Sean Monahan, but some middling pick could work for Pettersson. But again, the more teams that are in on him, the Jets might have to pay up. But if they're going to do it, this would be the year to do it.
Yeah, and some other teams might be more desperate, so keep that in mind as well, right? And maybe the Penguins want to hang on to him till the trade deadline, because I think the Penguins think, maybe they're in denial, but I think they think that they're still a good team and that they can make the playoffs and make a run. But yeah, they might be waiting till the trade deadline. But again, if you're going to add, if you're the Winnipeg Jets, it's probably at defense and it's probably a depth guy. And I don't say a depth guy to, it's not a backhand compliment or anything like that, but he would really shore up the defense there, a guy like this. And it wouldn't, cost too much for the Jets either, right? Because when you're looking at the lineup, you don't want to give up too much either. Certainly not an NHL player, and certainly you don't want to give up too many assets in terms of draft picks or anything like that, because you don't have to, right? You're a really good team. So I think it's very interesting heading into, obviously, the second half of this season to keep an eye on, because this is a guy who's probably going to be on his way out of Pittsburgh, and I think the Jets should be in on him. But again, he's a rental. It's interesting in that way, but if you're going to get anyone from Pittsburgh, I wouldn't get Letang. I wouldn't get Carlson, especially if you're the Jets. This could be a guy that could be a difference maker for the Jets.
Yeah, let us know down below. Would you do a trade? Let us know what kind of package or pick or player would you want to give up for this guy. Thank you guys for watching. See you later.